I feel like comfortable with you. I feel like I'll always love you. I'll always love you. Always.
The Winnipeg Jets get the biggest win that they've had in a really, really long time, so why am I still worried? And LeBron James and Lakers are set up for success in the future. Just not right now, as their season is done. All that, and whatever you want to talk about, as Couch Potato Diary Live starts right now. Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. We are live on youtube.com/@CouchPotatoDiary, twitch.tv/primetimepk, and of course, kick.com/primetimepk. I'm sure there's a website called Quick. I don't know if they stream though, so we're not there just yet. But yes, thank you for stopping by here on a Thursday, the beginning of the month of May. Like I said, coming up on the show, tons of NHL to talk about, tons of NBA to talk about, and a little bit of the Blue Jays as we put a bow on this one today. If you're watching live, again, streaming this on multiple places, so if there is an issue with any of the streams that you are seeing, let me know, and I will try to figure it out as best as I can here on the fly. If you're listening later on or watching later on, we do these live multiple times a week here on wherever you are tuning in for it. So would love to see you guys in the chat as we go on, because look, some of the best segments that I've had here in the last little while have come from just people in the chat. So would love to get all the support that we could get off of that. Speaking of support, this show is supported by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for that great Calgary swag. This Cannon's hat is sold out, but some good ones coming down the pipe, so get ready for that. Just a quick side, did trivia last night. Guy lost his mind seeing this Cannon's hat, so a lot of love for the retro out here in Calgary. Also, if you need some energy, you can check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for that 25% off. All right, enough of all of that. Let's get into the talk. Really interesting game last night as the Jets take on the St. Louis Blues, kicking off a very important stretch for some of these teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's chat about it, shall we? The Stanley Cup playoffs continue, and for the Winnipeg Jets, the only way they're going to continue for the next little while is if they stepped up last night. And boy, did they, as they pick up a 5-3 win over the St. Louis Blues in a game that they absolutely had to have. And quite frankly, for most of them, it was a performance that they absolutely had to have. Look, Scheifele has been excellent in this series. Now there's some concern because he plays 8 minutes, gets absolutely railroaded by Braden Shen, and then doesn't come back. So no update on his status, and it's this time of year. So that's going to probably be a consistent theme until the game that they play coming up tomorrow. But that would be a really tough loss for them because his his playmaking is just on full display. And out here in Calgary, I was on Sportsnet 960 last Friday, and one of the texters asked a question, who is the most underrated player in all of sports? And honestly, now thinking about it, I think Scheifele could definitely fall into that category, because I just don't think people appreciate the elite level of talent that this guy has. Like, he is, I think, a really good offensive player, and his playmaking is just, it is marvelous, some of the passes that he is able to make. And look, like, a lot of times it's not just like oh wow, he somehow pinballed it through 5 guys and it got to the front of the net, but it's just the quick decisions. It is the puck is in the perfect place always, and it sets up Connor for that first goal, and it is coming off of winning a lot of battles along the wall. And that's where Winnipeg, I think, really showed their true colors in this game. This is a different team than Winnipeg teams we have seen in the past, but I guess the identity of this Winnipeg Jets team is always, we're going to be tough to play against. And I think sometimes you can look at, Scheifele to a certain degree, Connor, Ehlers, Perfetti, some of them, like they're not, this isn't Dustin Byfuglien and Blake Wheeler running over people or something like that, but it is those plays along the wall that they are able to create offense off of very quickly. And you saw it in that game. Suter, I thought, had a tough one. And the play behind the net on the first goal, Appleton gets clipped by something. He believes it's a high stick. St. Louis disagrees, and the referee agrees with St. Louis. But as Appleton is slowly getting up and kind of grabbing at his face here, as he's grabbing at his face, Suter gives him an extra shot. The problem is the puck's behind Suter, and then it's to an angle just kind of to his 3 o'clock, and then it's right beside him because it went in the back of the net. And he had a couple that he got beat on. Appleton beat him in the corner on the second goal as well, maybe third. Either way, Appleton beat him in the corner. That helped set up another goal. So Suter had a bit of a rough night, but it is off of a board battle. Scheifele gets it, and a lot of times, I think when we talk about like, oh, he won this board battle, it is with brute strength or whatever. You can use talent in those ones as well. And his hands, and again, the playmaking ability, his vision of the ice, and just his instincts in general. He gets the puck. It is off his stick so quick. And now Suter again has taken a guy behind the net. You have a forward who has lost the battle in front. Texier has lost Connor, who does a really good job of getting to an open area. A lot of times you just want to get like right front of the net. He takes a bit of half of a step back. Now he's open for a shot, and now it's in the back of the net. So just a brilliant setup, and something that they will really, really miss if Scheifele is out of the lineup. But when he does exit the lineup, enters, I guess, the third line. They were brilliant in this game for Winnipeg. And I have said this is the best third line in the NHL. And it was one of the reasons why I was talking about Winnipeg kind of needing to go get that second line center. Because if you can lock up, like that top line is going to be good. Like Scheifele, Connor, and whoever. If you can get that second line a real legitimate center, and then you can roll with a bottom 6 with Lowry, Nemesnikov, Niederreiter, and Appleton. That is depth that few teams are able to put out there at this point in the National Hockey League in this era, with a lot of stars taking up a lot of the salary cap. And so that line just completely controlled things for them. Like I said, I thought Appleton was great. Lowry was really good. Nemesnikov was fantastic. The speed that he still has, and the finishing ability that he has as well to be able to put things away. I loved what I saw from Winnipeg in this game. So I just think like that third line is enough that, like, obviously the high-end talent on St. Louis is there. Kyrou, Thomas. I would put Snuggerud in there at this point. He's been excellent in this series. Buchnevich has had some great moments as well. That high-end talent is there for St. Louis, but that depth isn't. Not to the point of Winnipeg. And, like, honestly, I don't know who has that. And in basketball, we talk about how depth is a little bit overblown in the NBA playoffs. It ain't in the NHL playoffs. How many times have we seen, like, everyone goes for the big moves at the trade deadline, but the team that has the success is the one that shores up their depth? Now, the counterpoint to that is Colorado did it, and those guys aren't doing shit right now. But still, that third line can win you hockey games. And when you are trying to win 4 out of 7, having a third line that can win you 1 certainly makes life easier. And it just helped settle Winnipeg into this game in a really important way. They played an excellent hockey game throughout. They were so superior in this game. and then the problem. And it is funny because in the first couple of games, or the last couple of games, I guess, I have said, look, it's 12 goals, it's 2 games, it's 2 really bad losses. I don't think it's Hellebuck's fault entirely. Now, and then we got into some discussions about, like, maybe not every high danger chance needs to go in, but you can't blame him for any of those goals. And now they pick up a win, and they only give up 3, and 1 is in the final minute after they've iced the game away. And I actually had more of a problem with his game in this one than I did the other 2. Like this performance on last night, on Wednesday night, was more in line with what people, I think, the perception was of the last 2 games, if that makes sense. Like, I thought he actually played pretty well in the 2 games leading up to it. It was just he didn't make those key saves at key times. I thought in this game that they won, I thought he was putrid. That second goal, that just can't go in. And when you are a Winnipeg team that is already really fragile, you have some concerns about that. And so when you now feel like you can't make a mistake, that becomes really problematic. Like this game, it's 5-3, 4-2, basically. You get an empty net goal, and then St. Louis gets one, like I said, after everything's been iced away. It shouldn't have been that close. Not even a little bit. Winnipeg completely controlled this hockey game. And so this was the one that I was like, man, Hellebuck, dude, like, I don't know, man. Like that was a really, really bad performance on a night where now everyone around him stepped up and picked him up and got him there. But that was the one that was the most concerning to me from a Winnipeg standpoint. It wasn't the 2 games leading up to this one. That game, that was so bad. He almost cost them on a night where I thought they were soundly outplaying St. Louis. And so, look, there were a lot of problems in the 2 games leading up to it where I thought St. Louis really outplayed Winnipeg, and then you're not getting the big saves at the big times, and so it all snowballs. But if Winnipeg is going to have to just whoop that ass to this extent in order to win games by 2, that's where you start to have a real problem between the pipes. So that there is, I honestly, I came away from this one, even though they won, more concerned about Winnipeg than I was going into it. And that I was not necessarily anticipating. It is kind of funny though. Like I, again, out here in Calgary, do a trivia night on Wednesday. So I wasn't able to watch this live. I get to, when I'm doing that, like I kind of tune out from all the sports because I got this thing to focus on. And so I walked into Pazzi, where I do this downtown, and they got the games on the TV, and I see Winnipeg against St. Louis, and St. Louis is up 4-1. I was like, oh my god! Like this is at home. This is a train wreck. And so I start setting up, look up, and say, oh, this is a replay from the okay. So Sportsnet duped me a little bit on that because I like in my head, because I know I got the podcast today, I'm like that this is a complete collapse and utter failure. I don't think they've quit. I just think they're overwhelmed. Blah 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 blah. And then you look up, it's like, well, it's kind of a shitty whiteout. Oh, it's the last game. Okay, good. And actually, honestly, the only way I caught it was I looked over and they had the Montreal game on, and it said pregame coverage live now. It's like, boy, that. A little late for that, isn't it? If we're in the second. Oh, I see. So that's just me being weird. But on the St. Louis side, I think they really showed how far behind the Jets they really are here. Again, Winnipeg has not played well in the 2 previous games, but this is awfully similar to the LA-Edmonton series. When these 2 teams are playing at their best, there is no question who is the better team, and it is the one who resides in Central Canada. The Blues are just like forward group 1 through 4, blue line, all of it. Even when the goalies are playing at their best, that they're not close. They're just simply not close. Winnipeg is so much better than they are. And so maybe St. Louis is able to be the banana peel for the Jets now in the next 2, because we've seen Winnipeg doesn't exactly bounce back all that quickly. So if St. Louis can come out, get a good start on home ice like they did back in game 3, then they have a chance to again put the fear of God in the Jets because their goalie isn't giving them the confidence to be able to bounce back in that sort of a way. So again, I would just have some concerns if I was the Jets, but looking at it from a St. Louis Blues standpoint, I'm not saying, hey, no, we can bounce back because we're better than them. Say, hey, we can bounce back because they might get a little spooked here. That's basically what it comes down to. A reminder that if you need some fuel for watching the playoffs or hanging out on the stream or you're gaming, Swift Energy is a great spot for that. Check out swiftenergy.gg and use the code PKPrimetime to get that 25% off. The Washington Capitals close out the Montreal Canadiens in their Stanley Cup playoff series. And look, eventually it won out. Washington was just the better hockey team. I would love to provide some deep, thoughtful analysis on the rest of it. Washington was just greater than sign Montreal. That is what this came down to, in my opinion. They got some pushback. Montreal got a ton of shots early on. Thompson was able to hold up, but then eventually Washington just pulls away in this game, and they're able to ice it. It is difficult because it's a unique opponent in round one. It is a young team that is on their third string goalie who, good Lord, some of the saves that Dobish was making in that game to keep them relatively close was spectacular. And so kudos to him for stepping up in a really, really difficult spot and making a couple, again, we talk about key saves to try to keep their season alive. Bravo to him for that one. But it's one where, like, you're getting ready now for the next round, and they'll play the Carolina Hurricanes in the next round. It is one where Montreal is not similar to Carolina, even a little bit, aside from the fact that they've had to use a backup goalie. And Montreal came into this one hot as hell, but also extremely young and inexperienced, and also bringing in a kid who had played like 2 games in the regular season before that and turned out to be awesome. So it's a unique setup. So looking at a potential Washington-Carolina matchup, not a whole lot of similarities in this one. But Washington goes out, they were the better hockey team, and they showed it. Montreal made it close in basically every one of these games, but Washington eventually does pull ahead. We're going to do more off-season stuff on some of these teams here in the next couple of weeks, but just for Montreal, they're going to learn from this. They really do have something special with this team, with Slafkovsky, who is absolutely, this was the word of the day a couple of days ago, Slafkovsky has leveled up. Any concerns about him after being the first overall pick and maybe taking some time to find his footing in the NHL, those are gone. This guy is really finding his legs, and honestly, I think there's another level that he can get to. That play he made to set up, I think it was Suzuki in front, where it's just a night, like, he is huge and has that long reach, and sometimes that can be difficult in tight spaces because you want, it's a lot to try to fold that in there, right? And he just, excellent use of the stick, just a little boop, gets the steal, quick pass out in front, quick one-timer chance, and it's just Thompson is one of the better goalies in the world. Not one of the 3 best in Canada, apparently, but one of the best goalies in the world, and he comes up with a big save when they need it. But Slafkovsky, Caulfield is awesome, Suzuki, and Demidov, good grief. Like, that is a top 4 that you can get really excited about. Slafkovsky, Caulfield, and Suzuki as a line itself are great. Demidov, Line was kind of all over the place all season long. Like, they are not a finished product, but they have the foundation set now. This isn't a team that I think needs to take a step back next year or anything like that. They have that foundation set. It's a 5-game series, so, like, loses the series 4-1. It's tough to say, well, hey, it was close, but they really were in this one for a lot of it. And it was as playoffs as it gets, right? Like, you have a couple of fan bases that are insane and just fired up. The buildings are loud every night, and there's physicality, and there's roughs, and there's stuff after the whistle. And now there's a lot of heat and a lot of contention in this series with what Tom Wilson is running around and doing. And credit Montreal. Like, again, they're out in 5, so it's tough to say, well, they hung with them. But They did. They battled very effectively. And I think they did a great job of kind of hanging in a series that was quite the series to dip your toe into for the first playoff experience. That this wasn't dipping your toe into the water. This was getting thrown in and seeing if you could swim. And ultimately they do lose, but I think they were able to keep their heads above in a very, very effective way. Moving to the stuff that we're going to be seeing tonight. The old ghosts are popping up for the Toronto Maple Leafs as they once again will try to put away the Ottawa Senators in game number 6. And look, there's a lot of conversations that have been happening around Toronto over the last little bit, and for obvious reasons, because everything that you were concerned about and every problem that the Leafs have had playoff-wise in the last forever weren't showing up in the first 2 games of this series, right? Like, they were capitalizing on opportunities. They were scoring well on the power play. They were defending really effectively. Like, everything that they kind of struggled with in playoffs past, they were able to erase those, even though it's against an Ottawa team that's kind of finding their legs a little bit. That all went away in the last game. Great opportunities, couldn't capitalize. Sounds familiar for this team, right? Power play chances, couldn't capitalize. Sounds kind of familiar, right? It's all the old ghosts that are popping back up in this particular one. And so, holy cow. Like, it is weird for the team not facing elimination to have the most pressure on them going into a game. But my goodness, if Ottawa gets this one. And right, you can see, because you are now in Ottawa. It is now, like, you are on the home ice of the Sens. And now if you lose it, you have to come back to a very, very nervous, whatever they call Toronto's arena now. Scotiabank something, probably. There are, again, a lot of old things that are kind of popping up. And you could see Matthews talking to himself as that game went on, when he has the great look and he ends up hitting the post. It's so that they need to come out tonight and just make a statement and just put Ottawa away. On the Sens side, I love the effort that they showed in Game 5. I have been a little bit critical of what they have done in the postseason so far. I hadn't aside from Brady Tkachuk, I really didn't like much of their games. Batherson's been around it too, but I didn't love much of their games. But everyone came out to play in that Game 5 with their season on the line. And while I've been more impressed with Montreal than I have been with Ottawa in this series, I still think that Ottawa now kind of found another level that they could get to. And I still think they have more that they can give. I still, like, Stützle has been quiet. Tkachuk has been really good. Batherson, I think, has been around it and just hasn't been able to kind of finish some of those chances. But I think Giroux has been quiet as well. Cousins gets his first. And, like, these are guys who you just kind of expect to have a little bit more. And I don't think they've even reached what the regular season capacity would be for them. So if they can find that next level tonight and really start to push this Toronto team, I think that there is going to be a lot of concern from a lot of different spots on social media, and certainly from the folks out in the biggest city in Canada. So look, again, obviously, the actual pressure is on Ottawa to not get eliminated from this game. But and there will be more time to have these discussions if it actually happens. But I talked about it on our video game stream yesterday. I genuinely have no idea what Toronto does if they blow this one. Like, at that point, it is like the Travis Scott Sage from the Elimination Chamber. That he did that at the Rogers Center. Now he needs to just go through the entire Air Canada Center and try to do that, because that would be just some kind of weird voodoo that you would never, ever want around your hockey club. But that's kind of what it is right now out in Leafland. Going to continue talking about the Stanley Cup playoffs, but a reminder that we do go live here on YouTube as well as Twitch and Kick. So make sure you hit that bell button on YouTube to get notified for when we are going live and when new videos are popping up, because there's a lot coming out here from Couch Potato Diary. The Edmonton Oilers have a chance to advance tonight as they take on the LA Kings. 8 o'clock Mountain Time start out here. And I have been critical of how Edmonton has played in this series. I cannot be critical of how they played in Game 5. They were so far ahead of where the Kings were. And the big thing, like, this was a, relatively speaking, quiet game for McDavid and Draisaitl. It was the role guys stepping up. It's Kane getting the goal. It's Brown getting a good opportunity. It's Frederick getting a good look. It's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Hyman kind of creating a little bit. And I will say, I do like the kind of pivot that Edmonton has made, because a lot of the time when they go with the hero line, when they go with Draisaitl and McDavid, it's Hyman with them. I do like that they have kind of backed off Hyman a little bit, put Perry up there, who is still serviceable, right? And for what McDavid and Draisaitl need him to do, which is just kind of get in the way a little bit, and maybe a puck will bounce in off of you, he is exactly what they need. And then you put Hyman with Nugent-Hopkins, and while that is not a marriage that has always worked, I think it did for them against the Kings in that last game. So I do like how they have kind of pivoted with that a little bit. And if they can get more from those role guys, because that's where I thought LA would have them, especially on home ice. Like, okay, we can put Kopitar against McDavid and Draisaitl, and at least, like, maybe not cancel it out, but at least hold that to only a, like, -1, and then the rest of our depth guys are just going to kill them. And that was not the case. Edmonton's depth ends up winning out. If that's going to happen, I don't know how the Kings win this one. I really don't. They need to get off to a better start. And again, they were the better team in the first 4 games, in the parts of those games where they were trying. They just took their foot off the gas. And in this game, in game 5, it just didn't seem like they were ready. And I made the joke on the video game stream that it kind of felt like they were the team that just kind of saw, okay, well, look, we got off to a great start in these last games, and it didn't really help us. So let's just pace it a little bit. And then it's like a boxer who says, I'm just going to pace it. And then they end up taking rounds off and just getting bludgeoned a little bit. They're down 16-4 in the shots before they get a power play opportunity. And Kuzmenko is able to get the deflection out in front. But after that, like, they had some chances, especially late. Fiala gets a couple of looks, but overall, they kind of got dummied in that game. And this looked like the LA team from past years. Like, they looked a step behind the Oilers. And so if there is a real chance that they have just let the Oilers into this series and handed it to them, basically, and didn't take advantage of the times where they had control of this. So very interested to see what happens with them tonight. And honestly, again, we'll have time to talk about off-season stuff in a little bit. But if this doesn't go well tonight, again, what do you do if you're Los Angeles? Because this team was a juggernaut in the back part of the season. We talked about all the different stats, outscoring everyone to high holy hell, and basically winning every game there was. So I think when you look at the Kings, if this is a 4th straight loss to the Oilers, you start to get, okay, like, what do we do? Like, do we just have to start over? And I would caution against that, because I do really like a lot of the talent they have on this team. But there would be, I mean, you would feel like you would have to make a substantial move. And I don't know what that is. And it's what we've talked about I guess a couple of weeks ago now. When teams get into desperation mode, bad moves start to happen. And so, well, we need a big move, so let's do this. Okay, was that a good move? Don't know, but it's a big one, and it's what we needed. So let's roll with that. So I think that this is a very important next 12 hours for the Los Angeles Kings and how they handle everything. Very interested to see how they respond going up against the Oilers coming up later on tonight. One more thing from the hockey world. And it is something I kind of been thinking about for the last little bit. One could say that it is even something that has been on my mind. So going to pivot here a little bit and just share one thing about the NHL and the postseason that has really been frustrating me lately. Look, the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best time of year for hockey fans. And I would suggest that no playoffs do it as well as the Stanley Cup playoffs. There is just something about the passion, the intensity, and everything that goes into it that makes it one of a kind. It is a different sport, it really feels like. And while every other sport does ramp things up when it gets to the playoffs, there is absolutely nothing like playoff hockey when it is at its best. I do have a problem, though, with how the NHL has set it up at this point. Look, that 1 through 8, I think, was a perfect system, quite frankly. You reward your teams at the top by taking on teams at the bottom of the playoff structure, right? Like, that just, to me and my brain, that makes sense. And so then they change it, which is, there are times where you need to be proactive instead of reactive, right? But the playoffs were this perfect thing that we all greatly loved and appreciated. And it created some amazing moments. And I couldn't imagine watching the Stanley Cup playoffs and thinking, you know what? This needs to be tweaked a little bit. And it was one of the mistakes that leagues make a lot. It was for the sake of rivalries. And now, if you're a longer standing hockey fan, you will know the NHL has been trying to shoehorn rivalry into things for a bit. Remember Rivalry Night on, what was it? I don't think it was just NBC, because that was hockey something in America or whatever, but maybe it was the NBC games, but it was Rivalry Game. And so because of that, you just got basically original 6 American teams cycling through that spot all the time. That was essentially it. And then featuring Crosby and Ovechkin as well. And then you would get, oh man, it's Rivalry Night. Washington, Minnesota. Like, what? What are we doing? I don't know, but we're marketing as Rivalry Night so people get interested in it. They have, for a long time, really romanticized this thought of the rivalries because we've had some great ones in the past, right? Montreal, Toronto, a tale as old as time, right? And then Ottawa gets thrown into the mix. And then for a little bit, we get Toronto and Ottawa. And oh man, what a rivalry that was. And then we get Pittsburgh and Philadelphia in this kind of iteration, right? With Sidney Crosby battling up against this violent juggernaut that is giving them all these problems and really being just mean to this guy. But then, like in the past too, Edmonton against Calgary. Oh, what a rivalry that was. Even Edmonton against the Islanders when they're kind of switching eras back and forth a little bit, right? Like we had all of those rivalries. And admittedly, rivalries are built in the playoffs. And it was easier to have those rivalries and see everyone all the time when there was 6, 12, 21 teams. And you kind of had no choice. There were but so many teams to face at one particular time. And so the NHL, I think, saw that as like, well, what if we basically just limited the field down to 6 to 8, potentially? And so they make this new format where you now play teams in your division in the first part of it. And we have kind of, again, forced this rivalry thing. And when leagues start to step in to try to create something that should happen organically, it almost never goes well. And the example I would use is Major League Baseball. Think back to like for those who are around my age, but like that the Boston Red Sox and the Idiots, and they have a really good documentary series on the Red Sox comeback in '04 that leads to that World Series, and that stretch leading up to it is some of the best baseball you'll see, where it's Yankees Red Sox. Yeah, the games take 4.5 hours, but there is drama in every last second of it, and it is just this absolute battle all the time between these two teams, and it is just the two of the best, and they're going at it, and the hatred is building each time to the point where Pedro Martinez is throwing senior citizens to the ground, and this Karim Garcia, all these different things, and the Yankees are my daddy, all of it builds up into this phenomenal crescendo where first Boone hits the home run off of Wakefield to send the Yankees to the World Series, and then the next year it is Dave Roberts with the steals and Ortiz with 1,900 big hits, and it's classic moments that you'll remember forever. And so baseball saw that, and every time the Yankees and Red Sox played, it seemed like it was a weekend, and it followed local coverage on Friday, Fox Saturday Baseball Saturday, ESPN Sunday. People couldn't get enough of it. And so baseball took that and was like, well, if people can't get enough of it, let's give them more. And they changed the schedule so that we then got 18 Yankee Red Sox games a year. You know what became less important after that? Yankee Red Sox games. Because you would see them, it's like, okay, April, I'll catch it later. And so you had this thing that felt important, and this thing that happened organically with these two top teams just battling it out in front offices and then on the field to face each other. And then you stuck them together 18 times and it didn't feel special anymore. And I'm worried that's what we're getting now with this playoff format, where you are trying to force rivalries. And I think it is... Honestly, it's a little bit of old WWE booking where, okay, what's the best way to get a rivalry? Let's just have these guys face each other a bunch. What's the story? They're facing each other a bunch. It's like, that's not... Storylines can come out of that, sure. And we got that with Washington-Montreal. That is now probably going to be a rivalry for a bit, given some of the animosity that came out of that series. And there's a little bit of history going back to Montreal stealing the show against Washington when the Habs were an 8 seed. But again, that happened organically. Florida-Tampa Bay should be almost the pinnacle of rivalries in sports right now, in the NHL anyway, because of Tampa Bay's history for so long controlling that area, winning cup after cup after cup, and now Florida gets the good fortune that Matthew Tkachuk wanted out of Calgary and wants to go to Florida. So they make the move, they bring in Matthew Tkachuk, and now this team is on the rise. First as a cup contender, then as a Stanley Cup champion. And now they are in this heated battle with Tampa Bay, who is now trying to counter this upstart team that they have controlled for so long. And it has been this clashing of whatever. Except Florida's quite a bit better now at this point. And so instead of this great rivalry that, oh man, this feels special, I'm good. We've got it a couple of times. I'm good on it. Same thing like Edmonton against LA. They have played, this is the 4th playoff series in a row that they are playing each other. When Edmonton plays LA next season in the regular season in November, is anybody going to give two shits? Don't think so. So you have got it a lot, which makes it noteworthy, I suppose, but that doesn't make it a rivalry. And so I feel like the NHL, in trying to create this thing that when it happens organically, it's amazing. When they try to do it, it just feels overdone and lame. And it takes away from a bit of the fun that can be the playoffs, right? Where you would have, it does let you set up a bracket too, which I guess. That part, I'm going to get to that in a second. I'm taking a lot of side streets here. But when you have this whole thing set up, and it was so great because you would have like this run in '04 that the Flames went on. And I know I'm referencing that era of sports a lot today, but that run the Flames went on in '04 where they beat the Canucks in the first round. It now feels like it is a gauntlet because they are the lowest seed. So now they have to play the number one team in the land, the Detroit Red Wings, in the next round. And so again, instead of rewarding the top teams in the league for being the top teams, Winnipeg, as the President's Trophy winner, if they get through the first round, their matchup in the next round is either Dallas or Colorado. Either a Dallas team that is playing phenomenal hockey right now, or a Colorado team that's got their captain back for the first time in 3 years and has some of the best center depth in the history of the sport. So, hey, congratulations, but please, let's keep shitting on teams for doing well in the regular season and making fun of the President's Trophy winners as if that's a thing. No, there's been a lot of times that's been screwed up, and it was screwed up before in the old system, I will grant you. But the reward for doing great in the regular season shouldn't be that you now have to play, in theory, two teams that you are very familiar with because you're in the same division, so you have to play them a lot. I think that it really changes the reward structure in the NHL. I think that it really tries to force something that used to be just so much fun with all of that. Also, spare me the bracket thing. Like, oh, well, everyone just likes to, they want it to be like March Madness where you can just fill out a bracket and go. If March Madness was 3 rounds, no one would fill out a bracket. It's only fun because the thing is comically large and you just get to fill it, St. Bonaventure or whatever, and you get to put that in. So, okay. Also, I would just like to state, for the record, very few are doing it by hand anymore. And maybe there are still some, and it's still kind of fun. And honestly, I do it by hand first, and then fill in all the things after. But I do think that if you are of the psycho variety where you are doing a bracket by hand, I think you can figure out that, okay, I think this team's going to win here. These are the teams that I have winning, and now we're reseeding. So which number is the highest? Which number is the lowest? Those two teams face each other. Like, I think people could figure that out. So every reason that the NHL would have for making this, you can kind of poke holes in it a little bit, and I think we are starting to see the flaws of that starting to find their way through in these postseasons. Again, the action's been great, and it has been a lot of fun, but I just think that this is a flawed system, and the playoffs are fun in spite of it, not because of it. So that is the story from the National Hockey League. Again, all the NHL stuff is all in one spot on the Couch Potato Diary YouTube channel. Just look up the hockey playlist. If you're watching this after, it's going to be in there. So check it out. But yeah, I know we cover a lot of sports on this show. If you're just here for the hockey, thank you. There is just a hockey playlist. You can check out all the hockey breakdowns there. Or if you are here looking for wrestling or UFC or basketball or whatever, and it's, this guy's talking about 2004 baseball while we're talking about hockey playoffs. Screw this guy. All the different sports broken up into the playlists that you would want over on the YouTube channel. Let's shift gears now and move to the National Basketball Association, where it is quite the time to be a veteran and a superstar. And the NBA had this glorious opportunity of maybe we're going to get Curry and LeBron in the second round. Well, that's definitely not happening now, thanks to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let's break down the story from the NBA. The National Basketball Association playoffs continue, and they will do so without LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers, as LA goes down against the Minnesota Timberwolves in Game 5 of their series in Los Angeles, giving the T-Wolves a 4-1 series victory. Now, I would just like to state, I think that LA lost this series in Game 4. We talked about it on the show previously. The issues that the Lakers had in putting Minnesota away and only using their 5 guys and having LeBron and Luka beaten up and battered by the end of that game, so they're kind of dragging ass, allowing Minnesota to have that comeback. I think that was a real tactical disadvantage, and I don't think it's a surprise that now LeBron and Luka each end up getting banged up in this elimination game. I can understand the desperation of the situation, and I understand that in the playoffs you have to shorten your bench, but you still have to use it. And you cannot rely on the guy who is 40 and the guy who got traded away whilst being an all-time talent for physical issues. I don't think you can rely on those guys for a full no-sitting half. And I think that ends up costing them here. But this is... I'm going back and forth on how strongly to go in on this Lakers loss. Because on the one hand, this is bad, right? Like, you have a dynamic duo of LeBron and Luka. You have, like, one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, and a guy who could, by the end of his career, get into that conversation as well. That's how talented Luka Doncic is. He is genuinely one of the most talented human beings to play this sport ever. You have both of those guys, you should at least be able to play 6 games in the playoffs. So, on the one hand, when you have LeBron in year 22, and you are able to get the fleecing of the century and get Luka Doncic, and you only get to game 5 of the playoffs, that is a failure. I don't think there is any way to look at it other than this is a failure for the Los Angeles Lakers. The future is set up well, but a big part of this is winning in the here and the now when you have LeBron James in year 22. And to be the higher seed, have home court advantage, and blow it in the ways that the Lakers did is almost inexcusable. And it goes back, it is tough to criticize the front office when they make the trade of the century, the heist of the century in acquiring Luka Doncic. But the ways that they lost were very predictable. That they couldn't defend in the paint at all. And they tried to make the move, and then a guy was hurt, and they ended up canceling it. And maybe they probably just should have overlooked a couple of things and made that move anyway, because it very much cost them in this. And so it is a bad loss for the Lakers. And you get Luka, so it's tough to say that this season is a failure, but this series is a failure, and a pretty big one from a Lakers standpoint. Now, you don't want to overreact, because this season overall, you get Luka. So I would probably put it in the win column. And you have gone from a team where in a couple of seasons it looks bleak to a team where in a couple of seasons you still have a guy who might at that point be the best player in basketball. And you now get to have him hanging out with LeBron, who excels in basically every area that you would want Luka to get improved in. And so while Luka does like to go off and have some fun in the summer, and such is his right to do, every moment he is on North American soil, I would have him attached to the hip of LeBron James to figure out what it is that makes LeBron, and how Luka can get to those levels as well. And so when you were talking about building out a foundation, there's obviously a solid one out there in LA, and it is 1 or 2 moves that can really help kind of solidify this thing and really get them to where they want to get to in probably a very quick time. So this feels really bad from a Lakers standpoint. On the one hand, it feels like a giant waste, but on the other hand, it did kind of feel like, I don't want to say just like a wasted season, because, well, you got Luka halfway through. That is a good thing to get Luka. That is in no way an inconvenience, but this team was not built to have Luka Doncic come in and lose Anthony Davis. This team was not maximized or built to really maximize what those two guys have. So now that you have a full off season to really build a team around the strengths and weaknesses of those two particular players, I think that they're going to be in a very good shape. So I think this was, as much as you don't want to waste a year of LeBron at 22 years old still being amazing, I do still think there was a little bit of trial and error, and let's see what happens here. Look, Jackson Hayes was not good in the early part of this series. I don't think he was so bad that while Rudy Gobert is looking like Shaq in 01 against you, that you can't even throw him out there for a couple of minutes and, well, let's just see if he can slow the guy down a little bit. So, like, I think that JJ kind of got in his head a little bit. I think he coached like this was his first time coaching in the playoffs. I think he's going to grow from this as well. But I do think when you look at this series, all credit to Minnesota, and we'll talk about them in a second. And we'll have a lot of time to talk about Laker offseason as it starts now. But I think this was more the Lakers lost this series than Minnesota came out and took it. A couple of good things for the Lakers. I guess one, Rui Hachimura, I think, had a real good run of good performances here for Los Angeles. He became a real weapon. And it was to the point where I was, again, coming out of game 4, like, why not just let Rui and the Blowfish go for a couple of minutes and let LeBron and Luka sit over on the sidelines and just catch their breath and take a load off for a second so that they can freshen up and get back out there and be effective in winning time in that game, because Rui was playing that well. And so that is a real weapon that they have in Rui Hachimura, I think, going forward. The Reeves part of it is a little bit concerning. This is a tough matchup for him. It's a good Minnesota defensive team, but they took him away. They completely took Reeves out of this series, and Rui tried to make up for that a little bit, but Rui, I think if he made up for Reeves, he just barely did, and then now he needed to also add himself into that too. So that was a performance, and that was a series that I think Reeves now has to learn from a little bit. He is a really, really good number 3 option, maybe the best number 3 option in the playoffs. But this was a bad one for him. On the Minnesota side, while just saying that the Lakers lost this more than Minnesota won this was the type of performance that Minnesota dreams of. Not necessarily the Anthony Edwards part of it, but to be able to close out LeBron James and Luka Doncic while Edwards is having an off night and you miss like 18 shots in a row from 3. By the way, I don't think that's being hyperbolic. The fact that you can do that is monumental for this franchise. And I said before, like last playoffs, they make their way to the Western Conference Finals. So obviously a good run for this basketball team. But this felt like a real, again, leveling up series for Minnesota to be able to just really shut down the Lakers for extended stretches and be able to have a lot of success. And again, we talked about it coming into this series. The way that the Lakers struggle are the ways that Minnesota can attack teams. They lined up really well, and you kind of wish you would have saw that more and just not got hard eyes emojis for the star talent on the Lakers, because this was going to be a tough matchup for Los Angeles, and I think we just kind of got lost in it a little bit. But this is a grown win for Minnesota. That this is the type of response after last year that I think you would want, and maybe this run does come up one round short of where they were a season ago, but I think that this is still major progress for this basketball team. Anthony Edwards, look, he was brilliant in a lot of the games this season, or this series. He had an off night in that game, but he is still great defensively, that he is going to impact games, and he is still the threat on offense. And we talked about it, the fact that he has improved his shooting so much. Last game, not a great example of it, but the fact that he has improved that area of his game to the point that he has means that this kid is going to be very dangerous for a long time. But he is going to need some help, and they got it in that game. Julius Randle may have gotten himself, I am not kidding, I think an extra 0 on his next contract. Like, I think that this guy multiplied what he could get in free agency exponentially, just going right at LeBron. And you could see, like, him facing the Lakers, there was a little extra something to that one, right? Like, that was not a gracious ending. And there is, when you see how it went in New York and everything like that, I think you could see, like, this was, there was a bit on him. But he has turned into the best version of himself. At least he did in this series. You do get concerned about the ball stopping with him a little bit too much, right? Especially when you have Anthony Edwards, who kind of needs to get in that rhythm and be that just linebacker out on the court. But he wasn't just settling for jump shots, and that was the great thing. He was attacking, and he had a matchup where he could attack. LeBron James in his 22nd season is someone that Julius Randle can go at, and that gave him the confidence, and it just got him rolling. So this was the best version of Julius Randle, and being that secondary option with Edwards when things kind of go sideways. And then Gobert was exactly what they needed him to be. And it is one thing to just say, yeah, he was facing a small Laker lineup that isn't built to handle things on the interior. But I would just like to remind you that when he was with Utah, those are the types of lineups that played him off the floor. And you got the slightest glimpse of it when the Lakers are shooting their way back into it. I think he was on Rui, and screen is set. So they switch. Reeves is coming around it, and Gobert sinks on it. And that is that's what happened every time with Utah, is you would just put him in the pick and roll and you either get him away from the rim, and now he is I'm not going to say useless because he is still a good defensive player, but his strengths are now gone. And so now you have the lane wide open for you to take advantage of things. Or he's going to get into a mismatch against a guard who, while he can kind of handle it a little bit, that's not necessarily where he thrives. And so he sinks off, but it's Reeves who has created nothing off of the dribble. And so it was a mistake. Reeves is able to hit a three. But you start to see that, it's like, okay, this could be a problem, because these are the types of lineups that gave him so much trouble in the past. And now two things happen. One, he has gotten better, and he is able to just take advantage of this. Also, this Minnesota team is, I think, quite superior to what he was dealing with out in Utah when he was coming up. And like the defensive side of everything, like he can come out and switch on a screen and kind of stay up high, because Anthony Edwards isn't getting blown by in the way Donovan Mitchell was, especially in playoff games when those guys were playing together, right? Like he has more support, so it is more difficult to get to the rim. So A, it's not as much of a factor. B, if it is, he has time to come back, help, and still make a play. But no, he was everything you could have hoped for Minnesota. And so now going into the next little bit here, I am going to be very fascinated. The next matchup, it's either the Warriors or the Rockets, and we'll talk about that in a second. Both are going to be difficult matchups. And one, I think, presents an interesting option and a unique opportunity for Rudy Gobert. The other, I think, is a really difficult matchup for him, given how well Şengün can handle things and how comfortable he is up high. Both of them, like both teams have bigs who feel more comfortable outside. No, I'm not going to say Şengün is more comfortable outside, but at least comfortable outside. And going to force Rudy away from the basket. But the size that these guys can put out there in this is really, really interesting. And if they can get through and face Oklahoma City, that size could give OKC some issues as well. So a fascinating Minnesota team. And even if this year doesn't go as far or further than last year did, this is still a team that has solidified that they are for real in the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, who could they face in the next round? That could have been decided last night, but it wasn't. Before we get into the breakdown of Rockets Warriors, would just love for anyone who is hanging out here today, if you could share this video and share around that we're doing the live streams here on Couch Potato Diary, put it out there, and really trying to grow this thing. And like I said, like I love hanging out in the chat. We got Deeds in the chat earlier over on Twitch. We've had a couple people over on Kick for a couple of times as well. I am very appreciative of everyone who is watching live. I would just like for you guys to have more people to chat with while I'm kind of rambling on and stuff like that. So let's share these videos and spread the word out there. That would really, really appreciate it. The Houston Rockets. I have here, the Rockets ain't nothing to mess with, as they put on an otherworldly game in Game 5 against the Golden State Warriors. And not that you needed to say this about a 2 seed, but this team is for real. And they are a for real problem in the NBA playoffs. I think that they have a incredible base to build around now. And I know if this season ends for them in their next game, there is going to be a lot of discussion about bringing in a superstar, right? Because we're anticipating, and we're going to talk about the Bucks here in a second, we're anticipating Giannis could be available. We are anticipating that someone from Phoenix is going to be available. I would probably stay away from Beal. But you know what I mean? Like Booker or KD could be a big move. And these guys, they have picks, and they have a ton of exciting young talent that they can help put everything over the top on. So there's going to be a lot of that, but as they are currently set up, this is a scary, scary basketball team to run into when everything is rolling. And the big key to get everything rolling for them is their point guard, Fred VanVleet. And we saw this with the Raptors in 19. Toronto does not make that run to the championship. Yeah, point to the guy there. You see him. They do not make that run if Fred VanVleet doesn't find another level. And there was a lot of theories at the time that he became a new dad and got that dad strength. But whatever it is back. He has been unconscious from deep. And when he is doing that, combining with the defense that this team can put on, it is so difficult to stop. And they can beat you in so many ways. When they put that big lineup out there where they have Adams and Şengün as the two bigs, just them alone, I think it was like 36% offensive rebound rate, which is silly good. I don't think you could do that 5-on-none with some teams. It is just that they are that good. And then you put the length of Thompson out there, and then basically with anyone, if you want, like Brooks, Smith, whoever, even just Fred VanVleet, who ain't the biggest guy out there, they can just really lock things down. And when Fred is hitting from deep and you really have to pay attention to him, it unlocks the rest of the offense. And that's what's happened in the last couple of games, where it was getting to the point the Warriors were just cheating off of VanVleet because he wasn't making anything. And now he is heat checking them and making some very big shots. And so now you really have to like one-on-one everything. And this Houston team, they still have a little bit of refining offensively to do, but they can be very dangerous, and a lot of smart cuts, a lot of great movement with this team, and a lot of guys who are comfortable handling the ball. I don't know if I would run my entire offense through it, but Şengün has had a couple of very good passes, and being able to distribute in those ways while also being gigantic has caused a few problems for Golden State. So the Warriors, or the Rockets, have kind of found their max level. The other part of it has been the play of Thompson, who is turning into a superstar right in front of our eyes. And people were talking about this all season long. Now that Houston has this national spotlight, we are seeing it. This is one of the best defensive jobs on Steph Curry any one human being has ever done. And that was the key in Game 5, is that they were able to get the ball out of Steph's hands and try to make the other guys beat them. And for a bit, Podziemski is able to make a couple of threes, and Post hits a couple of threes. But with Jimmy Butler still banged up and Draymond being inconsistent on the offensive side, that is like they need the ball in Steph Curry's hands. And Thompson is one of the first ones who has really been able to just one-on-one be able to do that. And now they're throwing help with him as well. I'm understanding it is not just a box and one with him out there, but the work that he has been able to do has really thrown Golden State, or at least it did in Game 5, really threw Golden State off of their game plan. And I can't remember the last time that someone was able to successfully do the someone else beat us with Steph Curry without throwing 4 human beings at him all at one time. That this has been, again, an amazing performance. And like, there is, I think, quite a bit of refining that he needs to do on the offensive side. But if he gets that going at all, this kid is scary good and an all-star for a really, really, really long time. And then Şengün, I think when he is distributing well, that unlocks something in the rest of this offense. But they are for real. This isn't just a young team that we're going to see. They were a 2 seed that year, man. I don't know. Like, they're not Memphis. Honestly, they're what Orlando should aspire to be, where the defensive part is locked down, but the offense can be really threatening too. On the Golden State side, like they need their best guys to be their best guys. They are not going to win this. While I have liked Hield at times in this series, they are not going to win this if Podziemski and Hield and Post are the ones who are taking all of the shots. This needs to be whatever pelvic contusion Jimmy Butler has, that needs to be fixed here very quickly. They need Butler and they need Curry to both be the best guys, and the Rockets have been phenomenal at taking Curry away. The matchup with Butler can be a little bit more challenging, but that one, that is the one that I think would keep Houston up at night, is like Dylan Brooks. He has all the experience. Canadian kid, love the dude. But he has had a couple of times when Jimmy gets going of keeping Butler in front of him, keeping him out of the paint where Jimmy wants to thrive, and he can hit enough from deep that it's a problem. So like Butler, I think, has to really get back to being a weapon in this next Game 6 here to allow Steph Curry a little bit of room to breathe, at least from just being smothered by Thompson. But again, the moral of this story is the Houston Rockets are a terrifying basketball team to play against right now. If you missed any of anything from this stream, which we're coming up on an hour and a half on the stream here today, first of all, Come on, what are we doing? But secondly, you can catch it in podcast form. We are available on Spotify as well as Apple. Just search out Couch Potato Diary. And wherever you get your podcasts. The New York Knicks have a chance to put the Detroit Pistons away tonight. They had a chance to the other night as well, and they lost that game for themselves. Brunson is an unbelievable story. He is a second round pick who, it is the classic, right? He's a second round pick because he's too small. And so Marcus Stroman, height doesn't measure heart, baby. He goes out there, he works his ass off. He turns himself into a really good role player on the Mavericks at just the right time, hits free agency, and he goes to the Mecca, Madison Square Garden, and turns the New York Knicks, one of the marquee franchises of the NBA, but also one of the laughingstocks of the NBA for the better part of 20 years, and turns them into a contender, and shows that he can be a star that you can build around. And he puts together awesome performance after awesome performance after awesome performance. And so I do not want to take away from the overall whatever of Jalen Brunson. And also he is the best player in this series still. But he lost them that game, I think. And we'll talk about the coaching decision in a second, but everything on this offense, and this was one of the frustrations with the Knicks, is that sometimes it can just get a little bit too Brunson takes over. And maybe for a bit he had to do that, but this is not a team that he has to do that on now. Last year, where it is him and basically that is it on the offensive side. Sometimes, no, they had a good team, but then they go out and they get OG Anunoby. And then in the offseason, they go out and get Bridges. And they get Karl Anthony Towns. Sir, you do not have to do this all on your own anymore. In fact, it's better when you don't. When this offense is running and Cat, who has mismatch after mismatch, is knocking down shots. And Bridges is able to attack. And Hart is coming up with some energy plays. And Anunoby is hitting key shots. That's when this thing really starts to thrive, is when everyone is getting involved. You're the linchpin of it and you can go. But the second that it starts to get a little bit wobbly, he just goes into ISO mode. And then he got cold in the game, and it allowed Detroit to get back in it. And you're screaming at the TV, just do something else. The second it goes a little bit off, he just goes, they run ISO through this guy every time. And it wasn't working in that game. And it allowed Detroit to get back into it. And you're pulling your hair out because you know what it's supposed to look like. And you know how good it can look like. And it's not looking like that. And for no other reason than just this guy is just holding on to the basketball. And again, awesome guy. This isn't like it's like McBride going out there and being like, no, guys, I got this one. This is one of the best players in the league who's going out and doing that. And so he is, in some cases, justified in what he is doing, but in other ways, that's not how this team has won these games. And it is, quite honestly, how this team has lost some of their games. And so if you want to drive and kick and Bridges misses an open three, which is happening too much in this series, but if you want to do that and he misses, that ain't on you, my guy. But when you are going out there ISO and missing jump shots, it's not working, and it allowed Detroit to get back into these games. And then the coaching situation late. So for those who didn't watch, Brunson just kind of flashing out on a guy. It's a basketball injury that has happened to basically everyone who has played the sport, where your toe just kind of catches and your ankle kind of just gives a quick over, and it's ow, 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 ow. And all of a sudden, it feels like Thor has just struck your ankle with lightning. That's basically what this was feeling like for him. And so he has to he tries to play through, but hops off. And then there's a loose ball, and Bridges gets dove into or onto or whatever, and he is slow to get up. So they both exit and try to get them back as quickly as they can in what was a very close game. The problem was, for the first time in these playoffs, there was an extended run with no whistles. And so while this is happening, while two of the three most important players on the Knicks are not just on the sideline getting fixed, because that's one thing, they are at the scorer's table ready to check into the game, the Pistons go on a run. And not only do they come back, tie the game, they take the lead, and then they take the lead by multiple possessions, if I remember correctly. And I'm not going to say they put the game away, but all of a sudden there's 35 seconds left, and now you have two guys who can't walk, who now have to come up with magic and make things happen, and almost did but didn't. That's inexcusable. They still had a timeout left. And while I can understand wanting to save a timeout in the foul, free throw, whatever, I still, in the final 2 minutes of this game, want my two best guys out there. Hobbled or not, if I just need them as a distraction so that Cat doesn't get quadruple teamed trying to go to the goal, then fine. But I need those guys out there and actively doing something. And there's a bit of it where you can see like, okay, we're still ahead. Maybe we're buying a couple extra moments and a few extra steps on these injured body parts for these guys. But once it gets just a little bit wobbly, you got to call that timeout and get these guys out there. Like I would rather go down with the ship with my guys even a little bit banged up in the final couple of minutes than whatever was happening there with the Knicks. And it just took all the momentum out of the game, took all the air out of that building in Madison Square Garden, which is really hard to do that in a playoff game. And it gave the Detroit Pistons some life. So look, the Pistons have been good. The Knicks lost that game, I think, with some not great coaching from Tibbs. It's funny. You never would have thought that with the way the regular season has gone, that saying, oh, you know what? Tibbs sat his guys just a little bit too much. You never would have thought that would have been the criticism, but that's what we had coming out of that one. But again, credit to Detroit. They're going to continue to grow from this. Cade, it does feel like every game they start, they are like, oh my God, what do we do? Like they get bright-eyed for every game, and then they settle in and start to make a game of it. But it's like every game, New York gets off to a good start. Pistons can't hit anything. Cade looks like he's playing with the wrong hand out there. And then he's like, oh, right, I'm, at worst, the second best player in this series, so I'm just going to be awesome for a bit. That cool? And then Beasley will hit a couple shots, and they'll work their way back into it. This is a fantastic learning experience for these guys. And for Cade Cunningham, solidifying himself as at least worthy of the hype that we had for him a little bit and getting Detroit basketball back on the map. The other desperation one tonight is the LA Clippers as they will try to survive against the Denver Nuggets. There isn't a whole lot to break down from that game 5. Denver was just awesome. And they were awesome in the way that they need to be to win these games. Jokic is obviously best player in the world, right? We agree on that? Cool. He needs help. And this game, he got help. When Murray is firing like that, I don't want to say that's all they need, but that is really close to all they need. Is just Jokic and someone else. And the problem, he can do that someone else thing better than anyone else can, right? Like if it's Christian Brown, you kind of need Christian Brown and a little bit more from Gordon or MPJ or Westbrook, right? But when it's Murray, it can just be Murray. And so he goes out there, lights it up for 40, and you can tell immediately, like, oh, this guy's not missing tonight. And he's going out there, and it's the arrow thing, and it's all that. Like, he is just on another level. And then he's taking on Kawhi defensively and all that. That was the type of performance that you need from Jamal Murray. And then it starts to feed into everyone. Westbrook's hitting a 3 and he's banking 2 balls. And Brown is hitting a 3. MPJ has probably his second best game of the series. And Gordon is making some big high-flying plays as well. There's just a lot to get excited about on the Denver side, and it starts to kind of snowball on them. So Jokic is obviously the best player in this series, and thusly the most important. But if Denver is going to win again, it is going to be Jamal Murray, who I think has to be that next X factor that gets them there. And then, for the Clippers, they battled in that game. It's just they couldn't stop that. And so what do you do, right? Because the big thing is, well, let's take the ball out of Jokic's hands. Okay, fine. But when it's going into the hands of guys who are scoring 40, how do we stop that? And you can try to challenge Murray, but he is so dangerous off the hop that he'll just blow past you and get to the rim. And then you're putting Zubats in a tough spot because you either have Jokic dragging him up high, so okay, we're going to try to pin down with him, help out, and now we're kicking it out. And so we have willfully allowed them to give the ball to the best player in the world, or this guy has an uncontested ba-boom at the rim and shit. So this is, when they are great, they are still so tough to stop. It is just so much more has to go right for Denver to be great in that. But when they are difficult. And so aside from using a chair, I don't know what the Clippers could have done more in that one. It will be interesting, though, to see kind of how they counteract this coming up in in game 6. And also it will be interesting. Well, this season, again, it's kind of a little bit like the Lakers one, but not so much, where this has gone better than expected this year for the Clippers, right? Like one of my locks at the beginning of the year was Clippers under, because I was like, well, Kawhi's going to miss a ton of time, and it's James Harden running things. I'm sorry, I've seen that before. But like James Harden kind of found the best-ish version of himself for what he can be now. And then you get a lot, like Zubats turns into an all-defensive player. Powell turns into a really strong depth piece for this team. And then Kawhi comes back and it all fits, and they turn into a very dangerous team. And so, like, on the one hand, you have seen that this still can work in a high level way. Like when George left, it kind of felt like they were trying to be half pregnant, where it was we're trying to stay competitive. We have Kawhi, we have this new arena. We're trying to do something here, but we're not going to go all the way with it because we kind of know what we have. And so you're just kind of stuck as this team that's going to lose in the first round a bunch. And now they might, but it feels like there's more hope in LA that with the Clippers than there was a time before. That being said, basically every playoff series the Clippers have lost in the Kawhi era, Kawhi was on the bench in street clothes at the end of it. And so it feels like a waste to have that guy playing that well still and lose out in the first round. So one of these teams is going to be very disappointed at how this series ends up based on the talent that they have. It's why it's been the best matchup in the playoffs so far, and that continues at least for one more night. The postseason does not continue for the Milwaukee Bucks. A horrendous loss to close things out. This was a couple days ago, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it since. Just inexcusable. Up 118-111 with 40 seconds to go in overtime, and the Bucks lose. Unimaginable to have that happen. And you feel awful for Gary Trent Jr., who was the reason that game got to overtime. He was on fire. And the reason they were up, that they gave up the first basket of OT, I believe it was, and then didn't give up another one for a bit because Trent Jr. is just three ball, bang, and just rolling right through them. But then rolling right through them is not intentional, but quite the phrase for it, because he takes the pass and it just right through the wickets. And out of bounds it goes, and it gives Indy life, and they don't give it up. And credit the Pacers for taking advantage, credit that home court for getting them into it, but that is multiple turnovers in those spots for what is supposed to be a veteran team. And I get, like, Gary Trent Jr. is not how could he possibly have, right? Like, he is the role guy. And it's like AJ Green wasn't there before, but this is still like, this is Giannis, this is Lopez, this is Prince, this is those guys who have been in some high level spots before. This is not supposed to happen to this team. And it did. And that is a very big concern. So again, look, this is not going to quiet the where is Giannis going to go thing, because like this was an inexcusable way to end the season. And one that really makes you, given how the Lillard injury goes down, he's out for a while now. And now how is someone his age, his size, going to respond to that is going to be obviously very key, but also not something I would just be banking on at this point. And Giannis, he has his championship. He likes it in Milwaukee, but is it time to move on into something else? Because he was spectacular. All series long, he was great. And it feels like a waste to have him out in 5 games and to have him out in these ones. The one thing that would maybe give you a little bit of like, oh, okay. And maybe not, I mean, look, he still might want out. But the thing with Halliburton's dad after, where Halliburton's dad's getting right in his face, last 2 years, we've talked about the press conferences with Giannis, and it's like, what is a failure? I don't consider basketball, there is no failures, and those sorts of things, right? And like, if I'm a Bucks fan, it's like, hey man, thanks for the title, but what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we're supposed to be a championship team around the first round. Like, that feels like a failure to me. This was not that press conference. This was like, what? I've won titles. He hasn't. What is he talking about? And so there was a little bit of like this guy this season has remembered how good he is. And so I don't know if there needs to be something else. Well, if he's going to stay in Milwaukee, it has to look a lot different around him this upcoming season. Like, I think you have to, and again, not to fall into the traps that we talked about before, where star players and teams with them tend to fuck it up because they just get desperate. But you have to surround this guy with more talent than you have right now. And that is even if Lillard comes back at the peak of his powers. It still wasn't enough with him. That this is a poorly constructed basketball team, and you cannot have that when that guy is still in his prime. On the Pacers side of it, like, just some credit to them. they put a ton of pressure on Milwaukee and forced all of those turnovers and put them in a spot where they were able to battle back and win the game. Halliburton has been quiet in these games and then kind of picked his spots, and he came up huge. He was really good. You could tell he was embracing the limelight with this and kind of embracing this whole thing and kind of playing into his WWE fandom a little bit with some of that. But he really found it in this series again, and that makes this team very dangerous. And again, it is kind of similar to Minnesota. These guys might not make it as far as they did a season ago because the bracket kind of broke their way, and it's a tough matchup against Cleveland here in the next round. But this is a better basketball team than the one that played a season ago, and one that I think can now sustainably put on a run. I didn't think that from Indiana going into this year, that they could really be a team that could sustain it, because it was all offense, right? And eventually that gets shut down and you just run into better basketball teams. But now, with how well they play defensively and just the effort that they have out there, they are not, like, this isn't the Pacers Pistons from the Reggie Miller era and the brawls and all of that, but this is still a fine defensive team that at least can make you work. And it's not just bucket. Who's going to miss first? It's not that. This team defends really hard and pretty well. And they also have now, I think, a little bit more going on offense. Halliburton is great. Turner, you know what he is at this point. He is a stretch five that can be just an absolute backbreaker. But they figured out how to work Siakam into this offense. And then the big one is the step that Nembhard has taken this year. There are times he has, like, we talk about irrational confidence. I don't know how irrational it is with him, but there are some times he's like, no, I'm the best player on the floor right now. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to be the best player on the floor. And he has that, and he just executes all the time. And so when he is scoring at that level, and you have all those guys you need to worry about, this becomes a very difficult team to deal with. And then they defend very well. And again, it is not a picture perfect whatever, but they force a lot of steals, and it gets their offense into a rhythm, and it gets them into being a very, very dangerous team. So I don't know if they can hang with the Cleveland Cavaliers in that series, but I think that they can hang with them a whole lot better than they would have a season ago. One more thing to talk about here on the show today. Again, thank you all so much for hanging out with me on the live stream and for popping up if you're watching afterwards. But we got one more thing to touch on, and we're going to go to the world of baseball. It's the Toronto Blue Jays. They got to win. We'll talk about why this one felt pretty important. At least some of the key players in it do. Any chance I get to talk about the Blue Jays and use that intro, I'm going to take it. That is my absolute favorite. So Alejandro Kirk gets a big night and comes up with a walk-off win as the Toronto Blue Jays come from behind for a phenomenal victory. One game after getting just shit kicked by the Boston Red Sox. This is so needed for Toronto. The win in general felt very important as one at the end of April can feel. But it is the way the come from behind and also the guy doing it. We have talked about how this offense needs somebody to step up. And Alejandro Kirk is very uniquely qualified to be that somebody. We talked about him in guys who could have a bit of a breakout type of a season. It's just every broadcast you hear, when Kirk comes up, it's like, man, this guy just knows how to hit. And sometimes it is a guy from Minnesota who has watched 8 innings of Blue Jays baseball all season, but talks to a guy and looks at the things like, oh, wow, this guy hit 312 as a rookie. And you know what? You don't expect it because he is kind of... But this guy can really take advantage of things. Like, boy, he has really found it. And you're not necessarily watching it all the time, but he does. He has a skill set and an ability to just kind of take over for a little bit and just get hot at the right time offensively. And they are in such desperate need of that happening because of how bad this lineup has been all season long, basically, for the Blue Jays. And so, like, he is just on fire with exit velocities and everything like that. Like, this feels, I don't know if it's a season-long thing that he's going to hit like 40% of his balls at 100 miles an hour, but he has the talent and he has the ability to go on a 30 to 50 game run of just being an awesome hitter and giving this lineup at least a little bit of a spark behind Vladdy and helping it out. And now, as he pointed out in the social media video, which made me a little annoyed when Santander went, hey, April's over. It's like, dude, You know. You know that this is a problem. Why is it? And again, if he's mashing home runs in October, I'll be fine with it. But it's like, can we not spread it out a bit? But if Santander does magically get his powers back from the Monstars who take it and only allow him to be good in May, if he can get that and Vladdy continues to be Vladdy, now all of it, this is not the Yankees or anything like that. But it's not the Mariners or, like it's not the White Sox now. If you have Vladdy and you have Kirk and you have Santander going, George Springer has certainly started to attack things, or has been attacking things really well. You've been getting quite a bit from him. And we said it before, Bo is hitting the hell out of the baseballs. It's just a real remarkable run of bad luck. You can, again, start to squint and see where this offense can at least be average and help it out. But Kirk is such an important part of that. And so for him to come up and get that win is very big. Now, because I am a Blue Jays fan and have been for the entirety of my 35 and basically now a half years on this planet, I am just wired to be negative about it in a little bit. And so here is where I have some worry. Jeff Hoffman is on an unreal run with the Blue Jays. And he has been everything you could have wanted and more. And I had said that I thought the Blue Jays needed one more guy at the top of that and have Hoffman be your 8th inning guy, have a closer in the 9th, and boom, you got a really, really strong bullpen. And it turns out they needed a guy or two, but in the middle relief part, not at the top, because Hoffman has been closer extraordinaire so far. The problem is they are using him a lot at the start of this season. And it's a lot for a guy who Baltimore failed on a physical before Toronto signed him. Now, I think that was more a Baltimore thing than it was a Hoffman thing. Like, he seems fine. And if there was a real problem, the Blue Jays wouldn't have signed it. Although it'd be quite the strategy to be like, look, there's only, like, we know this thing, there's some problems with it. So, we're going to ride this thing into the ground and just get as much out of it as we can. That'd be quite the thing. But it almost feels like that's what they're doing. I'm being sarcastic on that. I'm not accusing the Blue Jays of just trying to ruin a guy's elbow so they can win some games in April. But that all being said, like, he has been excellent. And the thing is that they've kind of needed him. And that is the bigger overall point. It is not like gasp, hand to chest, what are we doing with Jeff Hoffman? But it is just like, man, it would be nice if you didn't need him this much. And that's the problem with this Blue Jays team, is that, like, that they have been getting this great performance, and that's awesome. But it's that they have been needing him to go multiple innings and a ton of pitches in these games and trying to work as hard as he can to grind through just to help them hold on to a one-run win or something along those lines. That's a lot. And so I do think that there needs to be a bit of an urgency from the front office, and they have been better this year about, okay, if you're not working, you're out of here. The problem is they haven't found another one to come in and start working. So there is, I think, a bit of frustration on that side of it from a Blue Jays standpoint. I do like the urgency early in the year. We talked about how important it was for the Blue Jays to get off to a good start. And as the calendar flips over to May, it is a fine start. It is not a, oh man, here come the Blue Jays, but it's not a, okay, so who all are we trading now? They have shown they can at least be competitive in the American League this season. And so they needed to do that. And so I do appreciate that they are coaching with the urgency that is required for the situation that this team is in. I just don't want it to mean that by the time September comes around, little is closing games because they had to blast through Hoffman's arm to save them a bunch in April. So the urgency is great. And I do like that they are attacking this, because we saw in 2021, when they missed the playoffs by a game, you can go back and pinpoint a lot of games where you lost it because of a bullpen this or a mismanaged that or whatever. And maybe this is Schneider. He has overlearned from the sins of the past and has figured out, like, hey, I'm just going to let my best pitchers stay in as long as possible. And we're just going to try to maximize things that way. I think this is now a message to the front office, who, got a little bit of goodwill, keeping Vladdy around for a long time. And now apparently Kirk too. But they need more help in that bullpen, because Hoffman cannot keep this up all season long. And you should not need him to all season long. But a good win for the Blue Jays, and one to get excited about, because it kind of shows a few things that if it continues to go that way, you're going to feel really good about. that's going to do it for the stream today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Again, I know this was a bit of a long one, and I'm going to try to get better about the starts. I know that it takes a little bit to get into these, and so I am very, very sorry about that. But going to try to tighten that up here as we go forward. But thank you for hanging out. Again, youtube.com/@couchpotatodiary, twitch.tv/primetimepk, and kick.com/primetimepk. Love hanging out with you guys. Love doing the shows live. If you're listening in podcast form, you can get these early if you tune in live on any of the places I just mentioned. If having me in your pocket is more your speed and you want to catch these in podcast form, you can do that. Available on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And again, we cover a lot of ground on these shows. If you just want the hockey, if you just want the basketball, just want the baseball, it took too long, but we got the playlists up now. You can just run through a lot of the talk in the sports that you like there. I believe that's going to be the last stream of the week. It's a busy weekend for your boys, so got a few extra things to take care of, so I don't think we're going to do the video game thing today. I might be able to, so keep it logged on my socials. I'm at Primetime Klein on all social platforms, and that will let you know when I am going live with the video game stuff. But assume that we're not going to be back until Monday at noon, when we will have a ton of awesome boxing to break down. We will have... we'll have figured out a lot. Think of by the time Monday comes around, everything that we will have learned about the Maple Leafs and the Winnipeg Jets and the Golden State Warriors, and maybe still about the Toronto Blue Jays when we reconvene on Monday. So thank you guys so much. Again, check out Sea of Dead, seaofdead403.ca. It's Calgary-based, obviously. We've got the Calgary Cannons hat or whatever, but even if you're not a Calgary person, there's some really cool stuff on there. If you're a wrestling fan, Stampede Wrestling is the place to be. Obviously, look, we're repping this city. We love Calgary. But there's some stuff for those of you from out of town as well. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Have a great rest of your Thursday into the weekend, and we'll talk again next week. I am out.